Hi there, this is Evelyn Alexander with Magellan College Counseling, and I'm going to give you, I'm hoping, what will be a quick little half-hour primer as you get started on your son or daughter's college admission process. So I'm going to share this PowerPoint presentation with you, and I invite you to get in touch with me, and I will be happy to send it to you. If you go to our website, which is magellancounseling.com, and you click right here on the Contact Us page, if you fill out this little form and tell me in the comment box that you'd like the Getting Started webinar presentation, I'll be happy to send it to you as a PDF. So let me get going, and let's see if we can get through this in 30 minutes. I usually, when I do this presentation live, it usually takes a couple of hours because there's questions. So nobody else is on the call today. It's just me and you. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to get in touch. So this is just a quick little bit of information about me. I used to interview students for Johns Hopkins. I did not read applications. I was not part of the decision-making process, but I did get started as a volunteer alumni interviewer. I started Magellan in 2001, and we've grown very quickly and very well. We are based in the Los Angeles area, but we have 4 of us here in LA and actually 1 person in Boston. But we also see clients all over the country. Students today are very comfortable with Skype and FaceTime, and we found that we can do everything we need to do very effectively with our web-based program and by video conferencing. But again, the focus is on college fit, and so that's kind of what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. So let's get started. This is the scary stuff. This is the stuff you know, and this is what gives you angst about this whole process. You know, people talk about those top-tier schools and how their admissions rates are going down, and only students who, you know, have a 4.0 and a 2400 on their SAT and cured cancer in their spare time are getting in. But the reality is there's 2,200 four-year colleges in the U.S. There are tons of really great choices. And finding the place where your student will fit academically, socially, and emotionally is so much more important and will make such a tremendous impact on their college experience. So it's actually a better way to go to start using that as your filter. Let's find the place that's the right fit for you. So to that end, I'm going to talk about 4 questions that you probably have as you get started. What do colleges consider in this process? What can we be doing now if we have, you know, say an 8th or a 9th grader to improve our position in the end? What does college fit really mean? It's one of those buzzwords you hear a lot, but let's talk about what it means. And then what are some resources you can use to start building your list? So let's get started. This list is taken from a survey that is done every year by the National Association for College Admission Counseling. Everybody at Magellan is a member of NACAC. In fact, NACAC had their national conference last year in San Diego, so we were all very happy to spend a couple hours driving down and then a couple days with 7,000 people in San Diego, college admission officers and school counselors and independent counselors like we are, really digging into what's new in college admissions. And this is a big year, for the class of 2017, lots and lots of new things. However, I'll tell you what's not new. This list has stayed the same fairly constantly for a number of years. So I kind of tried to break it out into 3 categories. The top category are the objective measures, right? So we've got your students' grades. And really what colleges are looking at are grades in solid academic courses. So that's math, history, science, foreign language, and social studies, history. That's the first thing that colleges are going to look for. The next thing immediately that they're going to look for is the rigor. Are they taking honors and AP classes that are available to them? Then they're going to look at GPA or sometimes rank. Many schools don't rank. If your school doesn't rank, don't worry, you're not going to be at a disadvantage. And then, of course, test scores. Now, I know everyone is really anxious about test scores. In fact, on the day that I'm recording this, the SAT is happening right now. There's a whole bunch of schools that actually don't consider test scores or offer alternatives to test scores. They'll let you submit extra essays or an additional teacher recommendation. So I don't want to let that test score thing become a barrier. However, for many, many schools, it is definitely an important part, one part of the review that they do when they review college applications. The next category are a little bit more subjective, right? So teachers and counselors get to know students, or sometimes teachers get to know students a little bit better than school counselors, at least at public schools. But teacher recommendations are really, really important, and the more specific they are, the better. So I would say advise your son or daughter to try to get to know their teachers, not just in school, but out of school. They're looking to see how well teachers really know kids, not just their academic abilities, but their personalities as well. That's all a part of the recommendation process. Then, of course, there's that famous college essay. And we spend a lot of time working with students on essays and really trying to make sure that that they get to show who they are and speak to colleges in their own authentic voice. This is something I will give you a little tip here. This is something that parents should not use a heavy hand on because college admissions officers can spot the difference between parent writing and teacher writing, and student writing quite easily, right? 45-year-olds write very differently than 17-year-olds. So I want to advise you as parents to use a very, very light hand when you're working with your students and reviewing their essays. And then we've got the leadership and extracurricular activities. Colleges are looking for students who will make their campuses interesting, right? They're not necessarily looking for students who do everything, but they are looking for students who do one or two things kind of deeply and interestingly and at a leadership level. So that's something to remember if you've got a student in 8th or 9th grade. Have them get involved in activities that they can really stick with for a number of years and rise through the ranks and develop some leadership qualities. And then there's this one part that you have no control over, and that's really frustrating, but it's reality. And this is why you'll look at your friends and say, how did so-and-so get in? And you just scratch your head and can't figure it out. It's because colleges have institutional priorities, and they don't broadcast them. They don't tell you what they are. Sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's music, sometimes it's diversity, and which can take a number of forms. Here in California, we deal with a number of, obviously, California students, and we are the largest pool in many states, which means our students aren't unique by being from California. And so even though they think, oh, I'm an out-of-state student, I'm interesting, there's a whole bunch of other out-of-state students applying. So these institutional priorities are you just have to accept that there's part of the process you don't have control over. This is the exact same information I just described to you in graph format if you happen to be a visual learner. So I'll let that sit on the screen for a moment. And again, if you'd like a copy of this presentation, please just email me and I'm happy to email it to you. All right, so moving on. You might have heard this word called holistic. The colleges will say to you, we read applications holistically. And what that means is they don't just look at grades and test scores and then decide immediately you're in, you're out. Okay, so it really means they're looking at the entire package, the entire application, and what a student can bring to the campus. The holistic schools are the schools at which the essay, the teacher recommendation, the counselor recommendation are truly, truly important. And let me just say, if you're at a large public school with limited school counseling staff, don't be concerned that your students, the lack of time that your school counselor has with your student is going to harm your student in the process. Colleges understand that school counselors have tremendous, tremendous caseloads, 300 and 400 students, and sometimes more. In California, the average is closer to 600, 700, 800 students per counselor, and colleges understand that. So I don't want you to be concerned that that's going to dash your chances for getting into a super duper selective school. The thing to remember on this holistic thing, though, is it's not an opportunity for a student with low grades or low test scores to suddenly write a stellar essay or have a stellar letter of recommendation and leapfrog over students whose performance is significantly higher. So you have to really look at the numbers that each school broadcasts as far as their middle 50% of their admitted students. And almost every school shares the middle 50% of their admitted pool, which means you can know in advance where you are in that pool. So don't let the holistic thing fool you, if you will, into thinking that all you need is one awesome essay and you're just going to leapfrog over the kids that are 200, 300 points higher than you. I'm not going to spend any time today talking about the Cal States and the UCs, except to say that the Cal State campuses are entirely index-based, and so not holistic at all. They literally only need grades and test scores. And the UCs use a sort of semi-holistic format. In 2016, they've rolled out a new essay process, and they actually don't want us to call them essays. They have questions that they want students to answer in a very short written narrative, but they do use grades and test scores as a very important part of their process. Okay, so now that we know what colleges are looking for, now what do we do? So you start from the top, right? Grades in academic courses are the most important feature in a college application. So what does that mean? Strong grades are the most important part of a 9th and 10th graders' high school experience. Again, yes, it's important for them to get involved in activities that they're going to stay involved in 9th and 10th grade. But again, grades, grades, grades. So when I meet with 8th and 9th grade and even 10th grade students, grades, grades, grades. That's what we're looking at. Now, one of the biggest questions I get is how many AP classes should I take, and why should I take AP classes if highly selective colleges are going to unweight my GPA? And it is true, highly selective colleges will mostly recalculate your GPA on a 4.0 scale. Why? Because some schools have 8 AP classes available, some schools have 20 AP classes available, and some schools have none. And it's impossible for colleges to compare students. It's literally like apples and oranges, right? So they have to do something to put everybody on the same playing field. And so they will unweight your grades and recalculate you to a 4.0 scale. However, as you saw in that list, the very second thing they're looking at is, are you challenging yourself? Are you availing yourself of the honors and AP classes that are available to you at your school? So yes, it's important to take AP courses. Now, this is where we get into the how many problem. And the reality is there are some students who want to take every single AP that's available because they're trying to bump up their GPA. It's more important to get strong grades in the AP classes that are the most interesting to you and conceivably leading you towards the path that you think you might go into. So in other words, if you're a biology major, you should take, if you're telling a college you're going to be a biology major and you might be pre-med, you should take AP Bio, AP Chem, AP Physics if it's available to you. You should get up to AP Calculus if you're looking at the pre-med track. Do you need to go through the AP level of a language? If you've taken the language for your whole life and you're ready for it and you enjoy it, then yeah, take it. Do you need to take AP Government? If you really don't like social studies and history is not your thing, then you don't have to take that class. You don't have to take every single one available to you. Colleges will know when they get your transcript what AP courses were offered at your school. So I hope that answers the question. It's a very difficult issue. I always tell people, if you have a choice of taking 3 AP classes or 5 AP classes, and if you took the 3, you would get A's in all of them. And if you took the 5, you would get B's in all of them because you would basically be spreading yourself too thin. I would take the 3. I would take the 3 rigorous courses and do as well as I could in them, and then take the other courses at the regular college prep level. Okay. So what else? We got the grades. I get it, Evelyn. Enough with the grades. Okay, so find some extracurricular activities. Stick with them. It doesn't matter what they are. There's not one that's better than the other. People always ask me, is student government better than a varsity letter? No. They're looking for depth of involvement. So whatever you can do that you can do at a leadership level on an ongoing basis for several years in a row, do that. Research colleges. It's not too early in 9th or 10th grade to go visit a college, especially if there's one, a few right in your local area. Visit a couple different kinds of colleges. Visit a big school and see how it makes you feel. Visit a small school and see how it makes you feel. Don't just take the tour. Talk to students in the quad. They are almost always happy to talk with you. Ask them what life is like as a college student. What you'll find as a parent is that your student will start to visualize him or herself on that living and working on that college campus. So you actually want the student to do the talking. And the same is true at a college fair. All these wonderful reps travel the country and they meet thousands of students and parents every spring and every fall during college fair season. They really want to talk to the students. They want to explain to the students why their school could be a great place for them, and they want to know what questions the student has. So just advice to the parents, don't necessarily monopolize the college rep's time. Let your student take the lead on what their questions are. Towards the end of the process, at the summer after 11th grade, when we work with students, we build their college list all throughout 11th grade. We have them do research. We show them how to do the research. And we have them build their list all throughout 11th grade. And at the end of the summer, so right before they start their senior year, we want to make sure that they have a balanced list of reach, target, and safe schools. Why? Because the schools that are reach are basically reach for everyone. There is no number, there's no score at which I can promise you you're getting into Harvard, you're getting into Stanford. It's just not predictable. Harvard, I don't know if you saw the first slide, the scary slide, Harvard rejects 80% of the valedictorians who apply every year. They reject 93% of everybody else. But just being a valedictorian with a 4.0 GPA and super duper scores doesn't automatically get you in anywhere. And on top of that, again, we're looking for a place that's a good fit for you. And I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. Again, the balancing of the list is really important because every year you hear this, right? Oh my gosh, so-and-so didn't get in anywhere. Well, that means so-and-so didn't have the right list. Because if so-and-so was a superstar, which is usually the students that this happens to, he or she would have gotten into some schools if they had created a list that was appropriate. So I hate to say that, but there's always one or two kids that are disappointed every spring because they started with the wrong list. And then, of course, the parents are disappointed. And in my book, there's nothing worse than a teenager feeling like they've disappointed their parent. So that balanced list is really, really important. Okay, so let's talk about college fit. What makes it a fit? Obviously, it has your major. Now, what happens if you don't know what your major is? You should think about what direction you might be thinking of going in, right? You don't have to know that you're a bio major or that you're pre-med. You don't have to know that you're a photography major. But it's important for you to think about what academic direction you might be going in the next 4 years or in your 4 years of college. So that means if you don't know, you should explore multiple majors at each college you're investigating to see what they have, what the courses look like, what the professors are researching, if students are involved in the professors' research, and how you could get involved at the undergraduate level. So that's the first thing. Then you want to explore their clubs and their organizations. Maybe the student government is really important to you. Maybe you're really interested in a Greek system. Maybe your mom was in a sorority that you'd like to be in. So you should investigate. Almost all colleges have on their websites like a student life page where you can explore what clubs they have and take a look at the pictures. See if maybe there's videos. Watch the videos and see if those kids kind of feel like they're your people, right? That's really what we're talking about, is finding your people. Then you want to make sure the college is the size that works for you. There's a big difference in the size of colleges throughout the U.S. So there's a number of schools that are small, like under 4,000. There's a bunch in the medium size. There's a bunch in the large size, and then there's huge, right? So UCLA is closer to 28,000 undergraduates. Ohio State is 38,000 undergraduates. So you want to spend a little bit of time thinking about what size of school is going to be the right fit for you. And then silly stuff that you think isn't important could be really important, right? How far away from home do you want to go? Do you want it to be one flight? Are you okay in the middle of nowhere? Do you want snow? Do you want sun because you grew up in the snow and you're tired of it? So these are all things that you can easily find out just by looking at a map, really, and investigating what areas you're the most interested in. So again, you want the student to be doing the homework here. You want the student to have done the research and be comfortable with the school. You can reach out, you the student, you the parent can, but they don't want you to. You the student can reach out to the admissions office, talk to an admissions officer, talk to a student, have them connect you with a student who's currently there and talk about what they're doing academically and otherwise. I like to have my students name 5 things they love about each college that's on their list. And they cannot include ranking, sports, or location. And the reason is you have nothing to do with any of those things. None of those things happened because of your presence on that campus. And so, you know, growing up being a Michigan fan does not mean you're going to get into Michigan, right? So, and then most importantly, you really need to make sure that your grades and your test scores are within or above the college's middle 50% of admitted students. These are numbers that they report. And if you're at the way bottom end of the middle 50%, I would call that a reach school, right? I would not call that a target. If you're in the middle of the middle 50 or at the top of the middle 50, I would call that a nice target. And if you're significantly above it, depending on the college's acceptance rate, it may or may not be safe. Okay, so where do we go? How do we start? What resources do we use? So it's really important to start here, right? Most people think just because I've never heard of it, so it must not be good. This is really important. And what this link is a list that Harvard Law School publishes every year of the 172 undergraduate institutions from which their first-year law students graduated. So I'm just going to scroll briefly, and I want you to go to this link when you get the PDF from me, because what you'll realize is you'll see some names that you know, and you'll see some names that you've never heard of before. And what I tell people when they look at this list is it doesn't matter that you've never heard of it. It matters that Harvard Law School has heard of it. So I don't want you to think if you send your student to a school that you've never heard of and therefore you assume that no one else has heard of, that they're not going to go anywhere in life, right? And every now and then I come across one that even I've never heard of, and I've heard of a lot of colleges. So I include this on the presentation because it's really important to get over this I've never heard of it thing. I always tell people if the world were only full of jobs for Harvard grads, pretty much everyone we know, except maybe 1 or 2 people, would be unemployed. So if you're with me on that, then here's a couple places where you can start. I like colleges that change lives. These are mostly small schools. They are mostly liberal arts colleges. They are all over the country. Here's their website. Again, there's a link in the presentation. Let's see. Here's a map. This organization was started about 25 years ago. A guy named Lauren Pope was the education editor of the New York Times, and he was kind of annoyed that the Ivy League was kind of crushing kids' dreams with rejections, right? And so he went through the country and he wrote this beautiful book called Colleges That Change Lives, and he profiled 40 different colleges. You can see they're kind of clustered over here in the Midwest and in the Northeast, but some in the South as well. Let's see, usually there's a map here somewhere. And he actually went back 10 years later and talked to students who had graduated from these schools. And you know what? They're really fabulous places for undergraduates to make connections with other students, to make connections with professors. And keep in mind, if you're at a small school and you have a great connection with your professor, you're getting a really solid letter of recommendation for graduate school from a professor who truly knows your academic capabilities, right? So think about it this way. If you're sitting in a lecture hall with 800 students, your professor doesn't know you and you don't know him or her. But if you're at a school where the faculty to student ratio is 8 to 1 or 11 to 1, you're much more likely to get a really strong letter of recommendation. Okay, so I like CTCL, the link is here. For those of us on the West Coast, we have this great organization called WICHE, and the WUI is a program, it's Western Inter blah blah education, but the WUI part is the Western Undergraduate Exchange. And basically the WUI schools are the 14 states on the west of the Dakotas actually, and they made an agreement with each other 50 years ago and said, we will give each other's residents a break on tuition. So instead of paying out-of-state tuition, which is usually 3 times what in-state tuition is for out-of-state students, and this is again for public universities, only public, we will charge a reduced rate. So for most of the programs, it's 150% of in-state tuition. So it's basically like a 50% break on the out-of-state tuition. You could see actually on the presentation, I use Eastern Washington as an example. It's a beautiful mid-sized public university right outside of Spokane. So it's a regional university within the University of Washington system. And I don't know if you can see this, but in really tiny writing down here, the in-state Washington resident direct tuition plus room and board plus books and supplies comes out to $19,000, and then the WUI is only a couple $1,000s more. It's $22,900, about $23,000. That's actually a little bit less than what a Cal State University would cost you as an in-state resident. And you can see the out-of-state tuition is over $10,000 more. So that's for students who live in the non-WUI state. Now, there are exceptions. So the big flagships generally don't participate. University of Oregon, Oregon State, University of Arizona, Arizona State do not participate, but the regional schools do. So Western, Southern, Eastern Oregon. And then you've got some exceptions by major. So within the WUI website, there's a way to search. You can search by major and state right here. And you can say, I want a 4-year university. I want, let's say, Colorado. Let's just say Colorado and Oregon. Let's see what we get. And we want a Bachelor of Arts. And let's see, now it's going to tell me, so I actually skip the categories and I go straight to the majors. So let's say I want to be, and you can do a couple ones. So I might want to be an anthropology major, but I might want to be an art history major, and I might want to be a biochemistry major. Let's see what we get. So there you go. Here are a whole bunch of schools in both Oregon and Colorado that offer the WUI rate for the majors that we selected, and these are actually all fabulous schools. I've actually been to almost all of them, and one of them is a flagship. Look at that, Colorado State. So this is a great resource, the WUI website. All right, but again, exceptions. So you got to do a little searching. There's also again, for those of us on the West Coast, there's this fabulous organization called the Regional Admission Counselors of California, RAC. They travel as a group. They have admission counselors from out-of-state colleges or from mostly East Coast and Midwest colleges, although some of them are international. There's a couple international universities that are represented. Their admissions officers live on the West Coast, so their job is to meet West Coast students and convince them to travel east and check out their schools. They actually also have a website too. I didn't pull up that website. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Regional. It's just regionaladmissions.com. And these guys love talking to California students. There's a directory of all the members, and it's alphabetical by college. You can see who's a member of this organization. You can literally email them, call them. They're very happy to talk to you about why their school might be a good fit for you. This one's in Atlanta, and it tells you where they're based, right? So she's based in Portland. Lindsay is based in Los Angeles. Let's see. Christy is based in San Diego, right? Here's one from England. Look at that. Baylor has a representative based here in Los Angeles. Boise State has a representative based in Orange County. So this is a great resource, this regional admissions folks. There's also information you can download from their website. They have presentations up here. Let's see, partners, resources. So lots and lots of information here. And again, many of these schools are schools that you may not have considered. look at this, they have a worksheet on interviewing, they have a file on, a PowerPoint on how college decisions are made, they have a couple presentations in English and Spanish on going to college out of state. So tons of great resources here. And again, colleges you may not have considered, but this is their job, is to help you feel comfortable sending your child out of state. All right, so really briefly, sometimes people ask me, what do we do? Why is it that I as a parent can't just do this with my son or daughter? You can, but college admissions is different than it was when we applied to college, and I applied in the late 80s. So we partner with students to help navigate this whole process. We make sure that their academics are on track, both to graduate from high school and to be eligible and competitive for four-year universities. We help them do things outside of school that will enrich their high school experience and also make them better applicants. We help them create resumes. We practice writing with them. That's what we do in the earlier years. We also have assessments that we do that help them think about what they want to be for a living, and help them explore careers that they may not have known about. And then in 11th and 12th grade, we get pretty serious. We spend all of 11th grade helping them explore options. We give our students lists of sometimes 35 to 50 colleges to explore. We help them think about what's important to them and what they're looking for. And then, of course, we spend a ton of time on essays. And then we go through the whole application process with them. A lot of times we tell parents, we say some of the same things that you say, but it sounds different when it comes out of the mouth of someone that's not your mom. And so sometimes we sort of reduce the tension between parents and students by being the go-between, right? So you don't have to be the enforcer. We have timelines and deadlines and homework, and we make sure things get done in time and submitted on time. So the one thing, or the two things that independent counselors won't do for you is, we're not here to get you in. So it's not about who I have contacts with. It's about what the right fit is for you. And we definitely don't write essays. We help you brainstorm, we help you revise, and we help you make sure that they represent you the best, but we certainly don't write them. So who benefits from working from an independent counselor? Most people think that only superstar students need an independent counselor, but it's really not true. We have great experience with superstar students. We've got students at Ivy League schools and Stanford and Berkeley and WashU and Johns Hopkins. But we also work really well with kids whose parents think that community college is their only choice. So we help them see what their options really are. We firmly believe that there's a four-year college for every student who wants to go to one. And we're great with middle-performing students who might be a little intimidated because their friends are applying to Stanford or Harvard or UCLA, and they just don't really feel like they're in that crowd. So we help them explore, the vast array of colleges that are out there, again, with an eye for fit. And then if you have a student at a large public high school and you're concerned that they aren't going to have enough time with their counselor to go through this process as thoroughly as you want them to, we work very well with students in that experience. We probably have 85% of our students are from public schools, and maybe 15% are from private schools, just looking for a little extra time and hands-on. So that's what we do. If you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch. This is our website. This is our Facebook page. We post a lot of little tidbits and stuff there. This is my email address. You can also email us here through the website, on the Contact Us page. So here, this is what the homepage looks like. It's got the little flags on it. And we're happy to answer any questions you have. If you sign up on the Contact Us page, there's actually an option to be included on our newsletter. We do a monthly newsletter. So we're happy to include you there. If you just click this little box right here, it'll sign you up for our monthly email newsletter. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. And if not, best of luck in your college exploration and application process. Thanks for joining me. I'm Evelyn Alexander with Magellan College Counseling.